Well, we're watching the Lancaster County Democrats' Watchful Citizens Show. Our guest today is Susan Scott, and she's running for LD 29 State Senator. Well, Susan, you know, you've brought up a lot of good issues as we've been talking here, and you've been talking about property taxes, and you've been talking about this investment in the future, this investment in our children. And I think that that is really, really important. And one of the issues I see keep coming up, what's kind of colliding right now, is the increase in gas and transportation costs. And then how do kids get to school? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a puzzlement. I mean, I do think that, and it's hard because, you know, that's one of the reasons that the small communities want to keep their own schools, is because the city or the community lives and breathes based on having a team or having a school.
Sure.
But at the same time, perhaps it costs more and you're not always sure what the quality of schooling is or education, but then that does mean that more people are going to have to be transported. And you know, I'm not sure that there's again the poof answer, but you know, I even see it. Well, I mean, some of it has to do with the kids' energy level, and I was home for over the holiday break, and I was thinking about, well, how far I walk to school, and you know, where are kids at in terms of their walking to school, and you know, having been a runner for all of these, you know, 35 years, I definitely think that, you know, kids need to be getting out, and that really is one of the issues when you see some of these books about kids, you know, being in-house doing the, you know, all of the cerebral kinds of things on the television with Game Boys, and kids just aren't outside. And there are actually books on, you know, what are going to happen to the next generation that don't get outside, and the appreciation for outside. So, you know, one is to get people to think that it's okay for their kids, because I've seen friends that are still, you know, driving their 11-year-old boy 6, 7 blocks to school in a wonderful, you know, park-filled neighborhood, and it's like, what's wrong with this picture? But then, you know, when you get to the rural areas, that gets harder because the kids have long days and are being, you know, bused long distances. But, you know, I don't know that there's a real answer to that that I have off the top of my head.
Sure, sure. And, you know, you sound like you're a strong feminist, and women here in Nebraska are, by and large, compared to other states in the country, working more outside the home than in other states. I think some people would be surprised to hear that. And women are starting businesses. But is the support there for their families and for them to be able to do this?
Well, I mean, I think, and I do think that we're probably one of the highest, actually statistically, on people using child care, women in the workforce. And, you know, for 30 years of my career, I've been trying to work to empower women. But, you know, still lots of women start at not very high levels of jobs, and oftentimes people look at non-traditional jobs still in a traditional mindset. Women shouldn't be taking those kinds of jobs. And one of the things that, for instance, that probably needs to be better publicized is the YWCA actually has a no-interest loan for women that are re-careering or going into non-traditional fields. And so to get those kinds of words out is really important. But also to help women understand that maybe they can be a truck driver. And I know that part of what I think is important in the future is how do we get jobs, because it's almost like we want all these wonderful jobs, but yet the infrastructure costs a lot. And I know that one of the things I was working on was to try to get more transportation kind of jobs, because if you talk to the people at the Trucking Association, Nebraska can be a hub because we're so centrally located, and if you start something on the East Coast and have to move it to the West Coast with the same trucker, it takes forever for that trucker to get back. But if you can, in fact, have the trucks, when everything comes to the coast, instead of putting it into trucks, offloaded onto railway transport and end up here, then the round trip trip north and south to Canada or Mexico's only 2 days, and to make a round trip to each of the coasts is like a 4-day trip. And as the result, once they're back, then it can be offloaded and go to the other coast, and so that it might be more family friendly. And I think we need to look at how to make Nebraska more attractive to keep the families, to keep the bright young people. And, you know, they're the bread and butter issues, but then there's the quality of life things. And what are we doing there? And I think even issues like racism, people don't want to come to a community where everything looks like the 50s. They want to have culture. They want to know that their environment is an inclusive environment, that their community is inclusive. And so I think it's really important for Nebraska to work on not only having education and health care, and I know that the S-CHIP, which was health care for low-income children, that not only did George Bush take that out in terms of he vetoed another bill, but actually I know that Bill Avery's talking about it because Nebraska itself could increase the number of children that would be eligible even if we didn't go to get a higher number available on the federal level. So I think we need to look at all those kinds of opportunities and see what can we do to help everybody and to make it a family-friendly place. So I think that's really important.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it is important to go and have an open society that embraces the family. And